Hi, I'm Linda Cook,
And I'm Sharon Wren.
and this is Quad Cities Crime Watch.
This week we're taking a look at some of the crimes that have happened in the Quad Cities, and we'll be checking in on some of the court cases that we're already following.
Sharon and I do want you to know that we are not attorneys. We are reporters, and we cannot give you legal advice.
However, if you want to know more about these crimes and the other ones we're following, check out the crime page at ourquadcities.com. So what do we have this week, Linda?
Well, I would like to start out with a couple of interesting cases that are very timely, and in fact, one of them involves John Deere.
Oh,
Sharon, this is sort of an interesting statistic. This is an older woman who has committed a felony crime, and we don't see a lot of this kind of thing. Generally, I guess it's thought that men commit more violent crimes than women do. But in this case, a woman faces an adult abuse charge. She's 54-year-old Tanja Voterbeck, and she lives in Davenport. She faces a felony charge after police say she hit a victim who cannot walk. Now, this is a Class C felony charge of dependent adult abuse, intentional with physical injury. And I got all this information from court records, as you and I both do every day. We scour these records and go through what we think is germane to our viewers and our readers. Well, just a little bit before 1:30 a.m. on September 11th, Davenport police went to West 52nd Street for a disturbance. A witness says they saw Voterbeck strike a victim several times throughout his body with a plastic tube. Now, I don't know what kind of a plastic tube this is, but that's what it says in the court documents, the official affidavits. The victim has 2 amputated legs and was intentionally immobilized by Voterbeck prior to the assault, according to these affidavits.
Oh.
Now, Voterbeck said that she's caretaker of the victim, who was transported, to Mercy One Genesis for medical evaluation. Voterbeck was arrested, and then she was released on her own recognizance. That means that she was released with the idea that she will return to court on November 7th in Scott County. This charge is a Class C felony, and felonies have different levels in all states. Sometimes they have different names, but they have different levels. Murder, for example, is a bigger felony, if you will, than a theft charge. This is a Class C felony, and upon conviction, that's punishable by up to 10 years in prison. We'll be following this one.
Definitely. Who else are we looking at this week?
Not all crimes of harm involve physical harm, or physical violence for that matter. And not all investigators are the type of person you'd see with a spyglass and fingerprints.
It's not like the movies?
It's not quite like the movies. This one, I would bet, was investigated mostly digitally. There's a man who's 49 years old. He's from Sheffield, Illinois, and he faces a felony charge after an Iowa workforce investigator says he received benefits to which he wasn't entitled. James Balin-Seifin Sr. faces a Class C felony charge of first-degree fraudulent practices, including food stamps, according to an Iowa workforce development affidavit that's dated October 8. Now, these court records say that Cassandra Ellenwood, who's an investigator with the Investigations and Recovery Bureau of Iowa Workforce Development, filled out an affidavit that says she investigated Balin-Seifin's application and claims for Iowa unemployment insurance benefits, and that she confirmed with his employer, which is John Deere CEC Davenport Works, that he was working for them during the benefit years he claimed these benefits. So this is a quote from her. She writes in the affidavits, "By comparing the wages James G. Balin-Seifin reported to Iowa Workforce Development on a weekly basis with the wages reported by the employer, I was able to determine that he had provided false information to Iowa Workforce Development during his weekly claims, resulting in overpayments to which he was not entitled. The total amount of overpayment from Iowa Workforce Development, $18,661.
Oh, my goodness.
So, a warrant was issued for Mr. Balin-Seifin in October 2019, and that was served last week. He was released on a $1,000 bond from Scott County Jail. Again, punishment for a Class C felony upon conviction can be up to 10 years of incarceration.
Wow. And they were looking for him for 5 years?
Apparently, that is what the dates say. I wish I could tell our listeners more about what went on in between the time he was sought and the time he was arrested. But because that's not in court records, we don't know that. We'll find that out when we go to court hearings and examine more records. We'll find more details.
So everybody stay tuned for more. But we do have some more on a case that was pretty popular on the website, a woman who was skip scanning.
Sharon, what's that mean?
That is when you take an item at a self-check.
Okay, let's say it's a bag of flour. Okay.
You have a bag of flour.
Okay.
But you don't want to pay the, say, $3 for the bag of flour. So you take a less expensive item, say a package of powdered drink mix that's at 75 cents, and you scan that instead of the flour and pay that 75 cents.
And put the flour
in the bag. Yeah, and walk out the door with it.
Okay, so that's skip scanning.
That's skip scanning.
Tell us more about what she did,
Well,
allegedly.
It's not alleged. There's a conviction now.
Ah.
Linnea Bennett is accused of going to multiple Hy-Vees and performing this skip scanning. Not just one. She did it on both sides of the river.
Okay, so here's somebody who's planned this out, possibly has a route, we don't know, and bought groceries over and over and over, but didn't pay for all of them.
Not all of them. She skipped the scanning on some of them.
Okay, and what do police say about this case?
Well, she was arrested, and actually she faces charges in Scott County. She was convicted in Rock Island County, but faces charges in Scott County for the same act.
So her story is not done?
No, it's only done in Illinois.
Okay, so we will be continuing to watch this unfold now in Iowa courts, right?
Now in Iowa courts. And the punishment could vary greatly, as they do from state to state.
So this is interesting. You know, I have a lot of friends who have complained over the last few years about the dwindling of personal cashiers in checkout lanes.
Right.
And this is what is happening sometimes when there is no one watching.
No, some stores mandate that there's an employee there to monitor the self-checks. Other stores don't mandate that. So our person we're talking about here was accused in 36 different instances of scanning at stores.
In different stores or one store?
Different scanning items at Hy-Vee stores. She pleaded guilty on October 10th to retail theft, which is a Class 3 felony, and sentenced to 24 months conditional discharge. Now what is conditional discharge, though?
Generally, conditional discharge means a person is found guilty of a crime but not given a traditional sentence. Instead, they're released on a kind of probation and they have to meet certain conditions.
Right, and one of them is staying out of trouble.
Right.
Legal trouble. Okay. She has hearings later this month and in November on the Scott County charges, so we will have to stay tuned on that one. There was also a sentencing in a major case that was in the news from a few years ago out in Rock Falls. Linda, can you tell us what happened to Mr. Coleman?
Yes, Mr. Coleman was sentenced on Thursday, and this was a very unusual. Our colleague Gavin covered this. He went to this hearing, and a sentencing is a hearing, just like any other court, a piece of a court case, I should say. Normally, the defendant is there, the person who's accused, to hear the sentence, correct? And we've seen it in movies and TV and clips all over the internet. In this case, Stephen Coleman, who was accused of arson and murder, chose not to be in the courtroom during his sentence.
Is that something that happens often?
No, I've been a reporter for more than 40 years and I have never encountered this. And it's, in a way, it's a shame that his accusers, the parents of the children who were killed in this fire, didn't get to look at him and give their victim statements. Still, they did give victim statements today, very compelling. And in fact, they spoke with our reporter, Gavin. And if you want to hear more of that, of course, tune into www.ourquadcities.com. but he was sentenced to multiple sentences, not just one, for various charges, and he will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
3 consecutive life sentences.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean consecutive means they're not being served at the same time, right?
Correct. Exactly. One right after the other, consecutive. So I don't see that he has any hope of getting out. There may be some appeal process here, but I would have to honestly do more investigation into that.
Because he does have the legal right to appeal.
He
Everyone
may, but I'm
does.
not sure under these circumstances. This is a very severe crime and a very hard sentence, what I would call a hard sentence. When this happens, generally the people affected by the crime appear in court and give victim statements, and Gavin told me that these are very compelling victim statements. And he also told me that the attorneys said that this investigation may not be done. There may be more charges involving someone else.
Oh, an unindicted co-conspirator.
Exactly. Someone who may have helped, or we don't know yet. But again, we will follow those records as you and I do multiple times a day, and we will try to keep everybody updated as soon as we know the details.
Sounds good. Well, that's probably about all we've got for this week at Quad City Crime Watch. I'm Sharon Wren.
And I'm Linda Cook, and we want you to stay safe out there.
See you next week.